Welcome back, everybody, to episode 3 of the StatShot Hockey Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Brown, joined by my co-host, Nick Vogel. Guys, welcome back. We are through 2 weeks of the NHL season, and we're going to run through kind of our standard rundown here on the show through our standout players of the week, stock up, stock down, our top 3 teams in the NHL at the moment, and then one game to watch for this upcoming week. So we'll start with our standout players of the week, and Nick, I'll kick it over to you for your first star.
Yeah, the first guy I want to mention is Joe Pavelski. Obviously, Dallas started the season late with the COVID issues, but their power play came out red hot. Pavelski actually has 6 points on the power play, and he's a huge reason why they're hovering at a 66% clip right now. So 7 points through 2 games. He looks to be in line with his playoff self, where he had 19 points in, I believe, 27 games. I know that he struggled during the regular season last year, but he seems to be off to a good start, so I'm happy to see that for him.
Yeah, big start for the Stars this weekend. They get 2 big wins over Nashville to start their season, and Pavelski played a huge role. They only had 1 even-strength goal over the weekend, but of course he assisted on that as well. So my first guy to look at this past week is Jack Hughes. I predicted him to have a breakout season in our preseason article, predicting some breakout candidates, and he's living up to the hype. The former number 1 overall pick has 7 points in his first 5 games. The biggest thing for me, though, was he has 5 of those points at even strength, and for young players, I think it's really easy to get the bulk of your points on the power play. So it was big for him to get started on even strength, and I just think he looks so much stronger on the puck, and I think Lindy Ruff, as a veteran head coach, has done a lot for his game. So my second guy and final guy of the week who stood out to me was another former top pick and someone from the 2016 draft that's been much talked about this week, and it's Jesse Puljujarvi. Puljujarvi only has 2 points through the first 7 games for Edmonton this year, but he's really been impressive driving play, especially at 5-on-5. He has a 56% Fenwick 4 percentage, and he's only having 44% offensive zone starts, which makes that number all more impressive. And in the Sunday night, really exciting win over Winnipeg, the line of him, Connor McDavid, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins had an 83% expected goals for percentage at 5-on-5, which is just an astronomical number. So he's been really impressive, and coming back over from 1 season in Finland, it's been nice to see him contribute for Edmonton.
Yeah, and before we forget it, we'd also like to have a shout-out to Alex Texier. Obviously, the Blue Jackets moved on from Pierre-Luc Dubois and have a huge hole at center, and Texier has kind of shown flashes that he could potentially be that guy. Currently leading the NHL with 2.5 goals above expected at 5-on-5 play, and if you look at the goals for per 60-minute line combinations for the Columbus Blue Jackets, he's on the top 3 scoring lines, whether it be at center or wing. And I think that's a sign of a good player that has a lot of upside, and maybe has shown more offense than what Tortorella and fans thought, similar to a guy like William Karlsson beforehand.
Yeah, and obviously it was one thing with Dubois' play and attitude that kind of pushed him out the door, but you have to wonder if Jarmo Kekalainen and co. in the front office saw the development of Texier at the beginning of this season, and it almost motivated them more, thinking they might really have something as either a second-line center or even a first-line winger in Texier. So we'll move on now to our stock up and stock down of the week. These could be teams, players, or coaches and front offices that we think have really improved or hurt their stock through the first 2 weeks of the season. And Nick, who's the team that you're looking at and have been really impressed by through their first couple games?
I would have to say the Dallas Stars. Obviously, the sample size is small, so we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But averaging 5 goals a game, while only giving up 1 goal a game. And mind you, this is all while shooting at a 3.7% clip. Obviously, a majority of their scoring has come from the power play, and that's something that they're going to have to figure out. But a power play can carry you when your offense is struggling 5v5, and obviously with Seguin and Jamie Benn out of the lineup, that's something that they hope to improve on once those guys come back and are healthy.
Yeah, I know that was one thing you mentioned last night too, because we had actually bet on Dallas in that game, and they did come away with the win. Unlucky for us, the over did not hit. However, when we saw that Ben and Sagan weren't playing, you were really concerned about the over, but offense was not the problem at all. So it should be all that more impressive once they get those guys back. My stock-up team of the week is going to be the Winnipeg Jets. I've been really impressed watching this team, especially their top line of Kyle Connor, Blake Wheeler, and Mark Scheifele. I think Connor, my prediction was that he was going to win the Rocket this year, and I still think that's a very viable option for him. And they obviously just added Pierre-Luc Dubois. It's going to take a little bit of time for him to get in the lineup with the quarantine rules and negative tests, but adding him to a lineup that is generating 58.9% of scoring chances each game, I really think they're on a nice trajectory in a Scotiabank North division that's really wide open.
Yeah, and they also are getting depth scoring. I know that the Ehlers Stastny Cop line is actually tied for 7th in terms of scoring this year with 4 goals coming from that group. So Dubois is only going to help them. We'll see if it's going to be at center or on the wing.
Yeah, and I think driving play at 5v5, not to keep harping on that subject, but that's something Dubois is so good at. And, Laine can provide a lot to a lineup, and I think he will in Columbus, but a lot of his value will come on special teams, and adding a guy like Dubois who will drive 5v5 play is really important. So who were you looking at in terms of their stock decreasing this week? Someone who you might be a little bit lower on than you were at the beginning of the season.
I'm sad to say because it's one of my favorite teams to watch, but it's the Colorado Avalanche. Obviously, at this point in the season, they're a 500 team. They've been able to score. They're averaging 3 goals per game or just above that, but the problem is they can't keep the puck out of their own net. And you look at this decor with now Bowen Byram, Graves, Sam Girard, and Cale Makar. You have the ability there to keep the puck and to get out of your zone quickly, but it seems like they're too keen on making these fancy plays or not playing simple and getting the puck out of their zone when they need to. They're trying to be flashy, and I get that when you have a lot of skilled guys, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's not working right now, and they need to turn that around. Obviously, it's a short season, and I still think they will, but it's leaving me with a sour taste in my mouth and wanting more from that team.
I was going to say, I think that's the biggest thing. I think when you and I watch them, our biggest takeaway is they leave you wanting more, especially I'd even say on special teams, it always seems like they're seeking the perfect play, and whether it be a seam pass, a one-timer, or some type of backdoor pass, sometimes, as simple as it sounds, it's just shooting the puck and getting the ugly goals. So it'll be interesting to see how their attitude changes, especially with guys like McKinnon, Landeskog, and Rantanen, who, they have 5 goals for at 5v5 play as a line this year, but you need more out of that line, and they should be a dominant top 2 line in the league, in my opinion, right up there with the Bergeron, Marchand, Pasternak line from Boston. So
when healthy.
Yeah, when healthy. So my stock down team of the week is the Vancouver Canucks. We have wagered quite a bit of money on them in the past week, and it has not been enjoyable. So it's not for lack of enjoyment while watching, I'll say that. There are a lot of goals scored in their games for and against, but here are some key stats for me that leave me wanting more from this team, but also not seeing a bright future. For one thing, they're taking 15 penalty minutes per game. If you're taking that many penalty minutes, your defense is going to be under pressure all game, but then you pile that on with they have the most shots allowed in the league and the second lowest save percentage. Letting Jacob Markstrom walk in free agency could be one of the biggest regrets this franchise has over the next 10 years.
And don't forget about Chris Tanev. I know that the guys at TSN Sportsnet, Kevin BX, rather, was talking about how big of a loss this would be for that team, and he looks really good right now for the Flames. But yeah, they're just not getting the saves that they need right now, and Elias Pettersson needs to figure it out, especially in a contract year.
Yeah, and rumors came out on Sunday night that Pettersson apparently was changing agents. So interesting, as you said, going into a contract offseason to be switching agencies. But they haven't been getting enough play from Pettersson. And I'd even say outside of Bo Horvat and Brock Besser, there has not been much punch offensively. And it really hurts when a guy like Tyler Toffoli that you let walk in the offseason scores 5 goals on you in 2 games. So All right, well, we'll move into our last full segment here with our top three teams of the week, and we actually both have the same three teams, just in a different order. So, Nick, if you want to lead us off with your top three teams and your reasoning why you have them slotted where you do.
Well, the top team for me is the team I picked to win their division, and that's the Montreal Canadiens. I talked about it before the season. The way that they play is they can kind of bully some of the teams up there. Like you think about the Maple Leafs and even like the Jets to an extent. A lot of skill guys, but when you have guys like Deneau and Anderson, Weber, all of these guys just grinding down on the forecheck, putting the body on people, but also having the skill of Toffoli, Romanov, Suzuki. It's just a good mix of skill and physicality, and obviously they're scoring at an alarming rate right now. I think that their shooting percentage is going to come back to the norm. They're shooting at a 16% clip right now, which obviously isn't sustainable, but they have a lot of things in place. They have a lot of core pieces that are going to be around for a while and are only going to get better.
Yeah, and like you said, the shooting percentage will come down, but I think a great stabilizer there is when you have a goalie tandem of Carey Price and what looks like a revitalized Jake Allen, you can afford that shooting percentage to come down a little bit. So I think those two things will even out for Montreal. I actually had them third in my top three power rankings, and my number one team is your number two team, and that is the Vegas Golden Knights. And they have the most points in the league at the moment. I have just been thoroughly impressed by this team, top to bottom. I think they probably could use one more elite level scorer, but Mark Stone has taken serious strides to become an elite level forward, and I'm not sure there's a better D pairing in the league right now than Shea Theodore and Alex Pietrangelo.
Yeah, they're blessed that they were able to acquire him in the offseason. He's done a lot to solidify that back end. But I really like their fourth line, too, with Nosek. Who else is on it?
Is Chandler Stevenson on that line?
No, he's on their first line, which is actually the second highest, if I'm not mistaken. No, it's the first highest scoring line in the league with 6 goals, the Pacioretty, Stevenson, Stone line. But it's Nosek, Reeves, and somebody else, but every time I watch them play, it seems like they have sustained offensive zone time. They're not skill guys per se, but they grind on the cycle game, and they always seem to get good chances. And when you have guys like Pietrangelo on D, they can get the shots through the net, and then they can get the greasy goals out in front.
Yeah, and it's really helpful when you can run out a goalie tandem of Marc-Andre Fleury and Robin Lehner every other night. So those two guys playing behind one of the best D-cores in the league is really hard to beat on any given night. So it'll be interesting to see them as they start to play some better competition here. They obviously had a 3-game stretch against Arizona. They did win all 3 games. The last one wasn't necessarily easy as they scored with just under 2 minutes left. But I'm thoroughly impressed by Vegas and how they've been able to continue to build this culture and this team in just year 4 now. So Nick, we both have the same third team. I have them slotted second, and you do third. Tell us about the Washington Capitals.
Again, they're just a team that knows what it takes to win. Obviously, John Carlson is an elite defenseman, but with Ovechkin and I believe Kuznetsov and a few other guys out, they still find ways to win and battle hard. I mean, Nick Backstrom obviously is on the back nine of his career, but still looks like an impressive player. TJ Oshie. It's just you have to give them credit. When you're missing guys like that, you have to work hard, and they're willing to do it. I know that they played a few games into overtime, but at the end of the day, they found a way to win. And I think once those guys come back from, I don't know if it's a suspension or what you want to call it, but I think that they're only going to get better, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them make a move to shore up the depth.
Yeah, and I think one of the underrated guys on their roster is Lars Eller. And from a second-line center position at the moment, usually a third-line center when Evgeny Kuznetsov is in the lineup, I feel like every time I watch the Capitals play, he's not only driving play at 5v5, but in all phases of the game. He's really sound in his own zone, and he's good at carrying pucks into the offensive zone and not turning pucks over.
Yeah, he is a subtle player that, can impact a game. Ideal 3C, honestly. But It's interesting you bring him up because someone that he's lining up next to now with all of these suspensions is Connor McMichael, who I think has a real good chance to stick with this team. I didn't get to watch him so much in their first game with him, but he's a guy that I had as a dark horse to win the Calder, and I'm excited to see what he can do with that wrist shot and the speed he has.
Yeah, him with either Eller in the middle or even sticking on that second line and possibly playing with Kuznetsov. You never know. So the Capitals are another impressive team through these first 2 weeks. So my top three will round out with Vegas at number 1, Washington at number 2, and Montreal at number 3. Nick's top three, the Canadiens slotting in at number 1, Vegas at 2, and Washington at 3. So we'll go ahead now and wrap things up with one game to watch for the rest of this week. Nick, what's one game you're keeping your eye on?
My one game for this week is the battle for the Pacific Division between the Blues and the Vegas Golden Knights. It's going to be a 2-game series starting tomorrow, and I believe they play Thursday. But, like I said, with the Avalanche kind of, falling off a cliff, to put it frankly, these look to be the best teams in that division, and I'd like to see somebody take a stranglehold and show that they're, a team that can go far in the playoffs.
Yeah, really the first time we're going to see Vegas up against, a contender per se. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond, especially if they give both goalies one game in net. So my one game to watch this week is actually Tuesday night, and we'll get to see Toronto versus Calgary. And there were some fireworks at the end of the game on Sunday night. Matthew Tkachuk getting into it with Jack Campbell in front of the net. The Toronto media not all too happy about it. Sportsnet 590 The Fan, among others who were possibly accusing Tkachuk of purposely falling on Jack Campbell's head. I would say he didn't, however, to each their own. So I just think it's going to be a really interesting game. There's immense talent on both sides and a lot of American talent, Matthews, Gaudreau, Tkachuk. So to all of our American listeners, this is one to keep your eye on for future considerations. But there'll be a lot of star power, maybe a few fights as well. So that's one to keep your eye on. So we'll wrap up there. Nick, anything else?
No, I'm excited. I hope that it takes the tenacity of the LA-Calgary series and replaces it with Toronto. I think that'd be a fun series to watch. So
absolutely. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you for listening to episode 3 of the StatShot Hockey Podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Brown. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you guys again next week.